Okay, so just real quick before we get started with today's stuff, right? So the next chapter in writing analytically is going to cover thesis development. And I want y'all to please read this carefully, because this, in my experience, is the thing that has been like the biggest trouble for GSW students in a class like this, right? So historically, thesis development has been a problem. So I want you guys to really pay close attention to this, to really read this chapter carefully, and to please contact me if you have any questions, right? I also want you to do assignment 5 on page 177, so that's the end of chapter 6. And this is going to ask you, essentially, to start writing a paper. You're going to use one of your reflection papers as the basis for it, right? But you're going to revise that paper according to my feedback, and you're going to try to add a little bit more to it, right? So you're going to end up with something that'll be 750 words rather than 500. And the instructions reference 10 on 1. 10 on 1 is something that is discussed kind of throughout the textbook. So if you go back, even like to early chapters, you can see what they're talking about there, right? But what we're starting here, is the process of writing that first major paper. So this is what's going to occupy us for most of the next 2 weeks. And we're breaking this up into small pieces, right? We're breaking this up into stages, frankly, to make it a little bit less intimidating. So does anybody have any questions about any of this before we move forward?
So when you say for the assignment 5, use one of our reflection papers we've done in the past, you mean basically just keep our reflection paper, but then just go on from it to make it 750 words?
No, you're not just going to add to it. You're also going to go back and revise it, right?
Oh. Basic? Okay, yeah.
So yeah, you're going to be using that reflection paper as a basis, but you're not just going to stick another 250 words on, right? You're going to look at the feedback you got, you're going to revise according to that feedback. You're going to take into account the stuff we're going to work on today. And yeah, then you will revise and add 250 words, right? Does this make sense to everybody? Everybody with me? Okay. So if there are no further questions, then let's go ahead and talk about claim and evidence. What's a claim? If I make a claim, what am I doing?
Is a claim like a statement about something? Like you state something about something else?
Okay, yeah, I'm stating something, right? Am I stating something that is objectively true when I'm making a claim? No, I'm stating something that requires proof, that requires backing, right?
So like your opinion or your belief?
It can be opinion or belief, right? But usually when we say opinion or belief, we're talking about something that we don't really connect to evidence, right? So when you're making a claim about something, you are making an observation about it that requires some sort of backing, right? Right, so you're talking about an observation or argument that is not objectively true. Right, something that is subject to argument, something that is subject to debate, right? So then what do we mean by evidence? What is evidence?
What you use to justify your claim.
That's the way we typically think of it. I think using a word like evidence often encourages us to think of it that way. But I'd rather you think of the evidence as where your claim comes from, right? As what you use to generate the claim. So evidence, when we're talking about evidence, right, we're talking about statements or facts that are more or less objectively true, right, that don't require proof. So a good rule of thumb for distinguishing between the two is that if it's something you could look up to find the answer to, it's evidence, right? If it's a statement that someone is making about a fact or about a set of facts, it's a claim. So to give you some examples, I'm going to put two statements on the board, and you tell me which is the claim and which is the evidence, right? This is from a book by George Orwell called The Road to Wigan Pier. So, first statement. Middle-class people are fond of saying that the miners wouldn't wash themselves properly, even if they could. But this is nonsense. Second statement. Where pithead baths, that is baths that are right out the mine, exist, practically all the men use them. Which is the claim and which is evidence?
Statement where is the claim?
Okay. And what are some of the dead giveaways that statement one is a claim?
This is nonsense.
Okay, the fact that he ends it by saying, but this is nonsense, right, is a clear statement of evaluation, right? He's evaluating someone else's idea and finding it ridiculous. In fact, this is actually kind of meta because it's a claim about a claim, right? He's saying that middle-class people are making a claim about the miners, and that the claim that they make is itself nonsense, right? And again, like, this is something that you could verify somehow, right? You could, like, if you know, okay, if you know that there are baths available at the mine pit, you could verify whether or not people used them, right? So evidence is always going to be verifiable. All right, let's try another one. This is from an essay by the German art critic Walter Benjamin called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. So, first statement. The Greeks knew only two procedures for technically reproducing a work of art: founding and stamping. Second statement. Mechanical reproduction of a work of art represents something new. What's the claim and what's the evidence?
Statement of evidence.
Yeah, this is something you could look up and verify, right? If you did a little research on Greek art history or Greek, technological history, right, you could verify whether or not this is true. So this is the evidence. Well, this is a claim that Walter Benjamin is making about this evidence. Okay, so if this is the case, if the Greeks only knew these two ways for reproducing a work of art, then mechanical reproduction, reproduction by machine, must be something new, right? Okay, let's try one more of these. And then I want to turn to what y'all brought to class with you. All right, so this is from a book by the scholar France Fanon called Black Skin, White Masks, about, it's a study of colonialism and the effects of colonialism on indigenous peoples. So the first statement is, in the French colonial army, the black officers served, first of all, as interpreters. Second statement, the colonized is elevated above his status in proportion to his adoption of the mother country's cultural standards. Okay, so what here is claim and what here is evidence? This one might seem a little bit trickier, but again, think about which of these is a fact you could look up.
I think the top one's the evidence because it's more specific to a certain group, when the first one is just the colonized.
Uh-huh. Okay. And the first one, you could, if you could get your hands on French colonial army records, right? You could look this up and verify, right, what jobs were assigned to black officers, right? So yeah, so that would tell you that this is evidence. And the assumption, the claim that is being made based on this evidence is that in order to get ahead in the French colonial army, right, black officers had to be fluent in French and translate their own native languages into French for, for other officers, right? That the way to get ahead basically was to understand French well. So understanding the cultural codes and standards of the colonizing country. Yeah, okay, good. So here's what I would like you to do now with the writing sample that I asked you to bring to class. I want you to, if you can, turn to page 151 in Writing Analytically. And you can look on with somebody if you don't have it with you.
What's
The printer is down the hall. Your computer lab's down the hall. And just follow the directions in the assignment here, right? So you're going to be looking at 2 paragraphs of your own writing, try to distinguish evidence from claim, and try to see what the ratio is in your paragraphs of evidence to claim, right? How much of what you're saying is evidence and how much is claim, right? And remember to be careful here, right? To label as evidence only that which is objectively true and verifiable. were supposed to bring a paper that either that you're working on for another class or that you already submitted for another class. What's the old class or? Do you have something from high school you can use? All right, then you can grab something from this class. Just so that we can get give yourselves another minute or so. Okay, so here's what I'd like you to do now. Take and exchange your paper with someone else and see if they agree with your conclusions about what is claim and what is evidence.
Should we just all trade papers?
Yeah.
If we put, okay, we're here,
You don't have to read all that.
with these guys? Have we more or less made it through each other's, or? Okay. So, did you find much disagreement when you had looked at somebody else's over what was claimed, what was evidence? Or did you did? Okay. How hard was it overall to distinguish claim from evidence for most of you?
I was struggling, but the paper I chose was not the best for this.
Okay. Why not?
Mine was a psychology paper where I was comparing a movie with psychology.
Okay.
But it was mostly about the movie backing up like adolescent development,
Mhm.
childhood development, and stuff like that. So like the first statement was
Yeah.
like the evidence or the claim, and then
Uh-huh.
the rest of it was the evidence from the movie. So it was like a lot
Okay.
of evidence with like the small claims.
Okay, yeah, so that's actually kind of normal for this sort of assignment. And the basic idea here is to show that you can make the distinctions. And one of the reasons I wanted y'all to bring something from another class, right, was one, to show that this material actually transfers from this class to others, and that this is something you can use to write better papers in just about any class, right? So in general, you want to try to shoot for balance between claim and evidence in a paragraph, right? So in any given paragraph, you really only want to make one major claim. If you're making multiple claims in the same paragraph, you might be trying to do a little bit too much, right? And it might be a good idea to kind of split some of those ideas off into other paragraphs of their own. You also really probably only want in each paragraph one major piece of evidence. So a good paragraph, as a general rule of thumb, should be about half a double-spaced page. God, I know I can't talk today. Double-spaced page long. If it's, a whole page or longer, you're probably trying to do too much in that paragraph. If it's shorter than that, you're probably trying to do too little. Now, did any of you find sentences in your paragraphs that it was hard to classify as either claim or evidence?
Well, with mine, not hers, but with mine, I felt like when I was labeling claim and evidence, I felt like I just had a lot of claim. Unless I'm just completely wrong.
That may in fact be the case. Yeah.
Like my first sentence, I couldn't decide whether it was claim or evidence because it's kind of like a fact, but it's also like claim.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'll give you. This is actually something that pops up a lot. I'll give you an example of this that popped up in a student paper a couple of years ago. And the student who wrote this has long since graduated and given me permission to use this example and so on. So no worries here. But so he was writing about gun laws and gun safety, right? And he had written the following. He said that allowing more people to own guns increases safety. The city of Kennesaw requires people to own guns, and it worked out great. So which of these statements is he intending to use as evidence? The second one is intended as evidence, right? The first one is clearly a claim. But is this really evidence?
With the way that he ended it.
the way that he ended it turns it into a claim, right? And is it also necessarily evidence of what he thinks it is? Like, is he making the connection between these two things clear?
No.
Yeah, if he wanted to use this piece of evidence to prove this claim, what would he need to do?
Explain why they're required to own guns and not have, and it worked out great.
Okay, yeah, he would have to explain that worked out great part, right? But yeah, so,
Changing the word allowing to required.
okay, that would make the connection between the two clearer, right? Between the two statements. But what else would he need to do to make this piece of evidence suit this particular claim? What would he have to demonstrate?
Oh, how it
How
worked
it-
out great.
Helps with safety.
Yeah, he would have to show that there's clear evidence that this requirement actually did something to reduce gun violence in Kennesaw, right? So he would have to, say, compare, say, rates of violent crime before the law and after the law, right? He would have to also rule out any other factors that might have reduced violent crime that might have had nothing to do with this particular gun law, right? So the connection between your evidence and your claim always has to be made clear, right? And sometimes it's going to take a little bit more evidence to back up a particular claim. But you always want to make sure that your claims are substantiated. Right, that is, that they are backed up with evidence. So if you have a paragraph that's all claim, then you need to go back and think about what the evidence for those claims is, right, and how you can work that into the paragraph. The other thing you need to make sure you're doing, and this is where a lot of the content of your paragraphs is going to come from, you need to make sure that you are making the connection clear. Between the evidence and the claim you're making about it, right? You need to explain why this means what you are saying it means. So there's actually a model for doing this that I find helpful, and I think you probably will too. There's a British philosopher of language, his name was Stephen Toulmin, and he developed an actually pretty complex model of argumentation, right? But we are going to boil it down to its three most basic elements, right? So for Toulmin, any argument has three basic parts. There's the claim, the grounds, which I know that the word writing analytically uses as evidence. I actually think grounds is a better word for this because it suggests the thing that your argument grows out of, the thing your claim grows out of, right? Rather than something you're simply using to back it up. And what he calls the warrant. And the warrant is the logical connection between your claim and your grounds. And what I need you to make sure you're always doing in your papers is giving me that warrant as well as the claim and the grounds, right? You need to tell me why you think this means this, right? So to give you an example, like the most basic example of how this works, if I make the claim, I am a U.S. citizen, and I use the grounds, I was born in Pennsylvania. What's the warrant that connects those two?
Pennsylvania is a U.S. state.
Yep, Pennsylvania is a U.S. state, and if I'm born on U.S. soil, I'm a U.S. citizen, right? see how this works basically? Okay, so let's try a couple together. Now, this first example, I'm gonna sort of like give you a caveat here that I haven't followed sports seriously since I was a child. So I don't actually know which teams in any sport are any good, right? I know that when I was a kid in the 80s, the Detroit Tigers, who were my dad's favorite team, were arguably the best team in baseball. So we're going to go with them. So my claim is that the Tigers will win the World Series this year. And yes, this is probably more of a prediction than a claim, but just roll with me for now. My grounds are that they have the best pitching in the league. So what is the warrant connecting these? What does this suggest I think about what wins baseball games? Yeah. The warrant here is that pitching is the most important element of a successful team, right? Okay. Let's try another. We'll move from sports to politics. So, the claim is the next Democratic Party convention, excuse me, should be held in Atlanta or Phoenix. And the grounds I'm going to use for making this claim is that the Democrats narrowly won Georgia and Arizona in 2020. So what would be my warrant for making this claim based on these grounds?
They should hold it there to maintain the vote, I guess, to maintain the majority.
Yeah, that if there's a place where you were only narrowly ahead, right? Paying more attention to that place may help you build or maintain your lead, right? All right, good. So we all get how this works, right? So each paragraph that you write, in addition to your claim and your evidence, is going to need to include these warrants as well, right? Explaining to your reader why you're interpreting your evidence in this way. So I'd like to try another little exercise with you. So note that I said earlier, right, that we're not thinking of evidence here as just things that you use to back up a claim, right? Evidence is something that you are using to generate a claim. So what I'm going to give you here is a set of facts about housing construction and zoning. And what I want you to do is go through these, read them over, and look for the same kinds of patterns that we usually do, right? So, look through all of these together, right, for binary oppositions, for patterns of repetition, right, you see certain patterns that emerge across the whole set. And use these patterns you're identifying to try to come up with at least 3 separate claims about this set of evidence, right? Make sure that each of your claims accounts for more than one piece of evidence and that you can explain the logical connections, right? That you can give me the warrant. So take some time. Listen, yes, you can write on this sheet. I don't need it back. Scribble all you want. And everybody sees their 2 sides, right? Okay. Take another 2 minutes, and we'll check in about patterns that you're noticing. And then we'll maybe let you get back to trying to generate claims or improving the claims you've already got. So let's stop for a second here. What patterns are y'all picking up on? What patterns are you noticing in this set of information?
Card.
Pardon?
Card.
Okay, there's a lot in here about cars, right?
There's neighborhoods, houses, families, transportation.
Okay.
And then, cars, yeah. Those are the four that I've noticed.
Okay. Other patterns in the information people are noticing.
Suburbs.
Okay.
Yeah. Cities, like the way, city construction, kind of, or the way that they're set up, or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, cities, urban planning, yeah, okay.
Yeah, cities planning, or whatever.
Okay, good.
Development.
Development.
Yeah. Yeah, so I should have said city development.
Do we notice any historical patterns?
40s and 50s.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it starts at 45, and there's 50s, 60s, 90s.
Kind of like a timeline.
Yeah, we can actually probably come up with a binary there, right? Pre-1945, post-1945, right? Are there other things here that we might be able to arrange into binaries?
Suburbs, city.
Okay, suburbs and cities.
And what about the tourist destinations? That one's just on.
That one seems a little strange, right,
Yeah.
compared to this. So yeah, that might actually be one to think about then, because it's one of these things is not like the others, right? Anything else we could arrange into binaries here?
Maybe development in the suburbs.
Okay.
It depends on your definition of development.
What about cars and other forms of transit?
Yeah, they talked about that several times. Yeah.
All right. Anything else y'all are picking up on so far? This is a pretty good list. Okay, so get back down to it and see if you can come up with some claims about this. And if you have some claims, see if you can refine those claims a little bit.
I've been using the model that we were using. Is that what we're supposed to be?
Yeah.
doing? Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
Mhm. Yeah, no, yeah, if you, if you're making a claim review, you have to be able to tell me where it's coming from and how it's connected, how the two are connected. Speech circuit is malfunctioning today. Take 2 more minutes. Okay. So, before we continue with this, I do just want to apologize for not having your last reflection papers graded yet. I usually try to have them done by the next class meeting, but my upper division classes had a major assignment due on Monday. Just had to prioritize that. So I will have those done for you this afternoon. Okay, so what do you got? Yeah, Brandon.
For the first sentence, the 80% of everything built in America was built after 1945. I put as my claim that this year marked a change in technological growth for America, and I put because if you say 80% of everything built after that year, or was built after that year, then you could claim that before that year we didn't have as much technology.
Okay, what's the connection? I'm not sure quite what the connection to technology is here. Is there another claim we could make using that statement that is more directly connected to the fact that so much of the U.S. was built after 1945? What does it suggest about the built environment in the nation?
That one was weird. I didn't choose that one because that confused me.
Okay.
Say that again?
So what does that tell us about the built environment in the United States, right? As opposed to say, say England or Belgium or France.
It wasn't there. It hadn't been built.
Yeah, that most of the American built environment is quite new, right? So that's probably a claim that's a little bit safer to make using that piece of evidence alone, right? Because it doesn't say anything necessarily. Technology could be the reason why we built so much relatively quickly, right? But it's hard to get that just from that piece of evidence, right? So you always have to make sure that you are not stretching your evidence beyond what it's able to accommodate, while at the same time making a claim that is reasonably specific. What else have y'all got?
I did the 3-step,
Okay.
and for like the claim I put before the 1950s, more Americans walked everywhere instead of driving, and then for the grounds, I put many Americans didn't have cars or rarely used them.
Uh-huh.
And then for that last part, I put American homes built before the 1950s rarely had attached garages or carports.
Okay. Yeah, all right, good. So, yeah, that actually meets all the criteria here. Yep, you made an arguable claim based on grounds, and you provided a rationale for it. All right, good. All right, what else? Who else has got something?
I said that the rise of suburbs has led to rigid district building instead of mixed areas.
Okay.
And my evidence is urban neighborhoods and traditional downtowns usually include a mix of commercial, government, and residential real estate, while in suburban neighborhoods, different land uses are strictly separated by zoning laws.
Okay. Are there other pieces of evidence here that we could connect to that we could also use as grounds for that particular claim?
Yeah, from the 1960s to the 1990s.
Okay. Retail and commercial development move from traditional centralized downtowns to strip malls, industrial parks, and enclosed shopping malls, right? So these kind of places that are off by themselves, right? And is there maybe one that was right underneath the original one you cited that could also be used as evidence of the same
People
phenomenon?
in suburban neighborhoods opposed to building of new housing units, schools, hospitals, campuses, retail signage near their homes.
Yeah, have any of you ever heard the phrases NIMBY or banana before? So NIMBY stands for not in my backyard.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah, it's generally when people aren't necessarily opposed to something being built, they just don't want it built near them. Oops, sorry. David Bowie is telling me we need to wrap up soon. Banana is my personal favorite, stands for build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. And the banana is the NIMBY on steroids, right? The banana wants to make sure that everything is kind of separated away from everything else, right? And does it seem weird to you that people wouldn't want new housing units, schools, hospitals, and retail centers in their neighborhoods?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think they don't want them there?
Because I kind of did a claim on this.
Uh-huh,
Like on
okay.
that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But I had potentially like stated how they like the little traffic, they like more laid back. That's where I'm from. I'm from that kind of thing where I was like way far away from everything.
Yeah.
It's just nice having it where, you know, it's a safe area, not a lot of people either come or know about it even,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, traffic is the
Traffic.
issue, right? And the problem is, too, if we look at some of the other pieces of evidence here, too, right? The way that suburbs are usually built,
It's for a little to no traffic.
well, yeah, it only works if there's little or no traffic, right? So if you've got cul-de-sacs that empty onto feeder roads, right, you're essentially asking for traffic snarls. Whereas if we look at that older land use, right, where things are set up according to grid patterns, and there are multiple different ways you can get to the same destination, then you don't have everybody trying to get out onto the same road, right? So what we're seeing is a kind of quirk or flaw in suburban design, right, leading to people wanting stuff not in their neighborhoods. Okay, so I think we get the basic idea, yes? So we'll be talking about thesis development next time. So I just go ahead and get started on assignment 5 on page 177. We'll see you on Thursday.